I just want to make this clear in case anybody forgot what week it is. The Georgia Bulldogs and their fan base.
You are Locked On Gators, your daily podcast on the Florida Gators. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello and welcome back to another episode of Locked On Gators, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Thanks for making Locked On Gators your first listen of the day every day. We are available daily and free wherever you listen to podcasts and on YouTube. Happy Thursday. I am Brandon Olsen. Find me on Twitter at WNS_Brandon. Find all my written work with New York Giants on SI. No crossover Thursday this week. No crossover Thursday this week with the hosts of Locked On Bulldogs, because for the second time in 3 years, I went out looking for smoke and they were nowhere to be found. Crazy. You can start the season with a big return on FanDuel. New customers place a $5 bet and you'll get started with $150 in bonus bets. If you win your first $5 bet, visit FanDuel.com to get started. The Florida Gators face the Georgia Bulldogs this Saturday. It is Georgia hate week, and I've long said this is the one week every year where I go, you know what? I'm with the hate week stuff. I don't do it so much for Tennessee or Kentucky. Georgia, I hate them. I hate every player on that team. I hate every member of that fan base. I don't respect any of them, and I want them all to know that. And I like that. That's how I like to go about life. Unfortunately, the Florida Gators will not have Trey Wilson this time around. Ruled out already with a hip injury. Touchdown last year against Georgia. Had a pretty good game against Georgia. But I think even without Trey Wilson, Elijah Badger and Chimdike can still find success, especially looking at someone like Elijah Badger, who's been the best deep threat on this team. Especially, he seems like he has a good chemistry with DJ Lagway, who, unsurprisingly, DJ Lagway likes to throw the deep ball. Elijah Badger, a good deep ball receiver, always has been, even was at Arizona State. That was always a good thing of Elijah Badger's game. Georgia, 2 safeties out for the first half of this game due to targeting. That's expected to be upheld, so should still be without them. Pretty good for if Florida wanted to take some shots early in the first half or just throughout the entirety of the first half. I would expect to see more of those then. Could also be a decent game for tight ends or running backs underneath, just because you play a defense that Georgia runs. You're going to see quarters coverage. You're going to see cover 3, attack the seams, attack underneath. That's how you can move the sticks, move the ball there. I will say this as well. I think that DJ Lagway has 2 levels, really, right? He has to take what's underneath because Georgia will play too high at times, and Georgia will try to say, hey, we'll let you take what's underneath. We're going to come up and make tackles and force you into consistently converting, consistently taking what's underneath, consistently picking up yardage, running the ball or throwing underneath. And we're going to make you do that and bend, don't break. So DJ Lagway needs to be able to take those underneath passes when they're there and not force things deep, which he has done before. But again, I mean, he's really good at it. So he's been able to do that. DJ Lagway's legs could be a factor as well. Obviously, he's not as athletic as Jalen Milroe. There might not be an actually good starting quarterback that is as athletic as Jalen Milroe right now in college football. But Jalen Milroe, when they played Georgia a few weeks ago, or a month ago, basically, ton of success running the ball, whether scrambling or in design runs. I feel like Florida has to at least take their opportunities there. Like DJ Lagway, get upfield. If you see space, take it and just go there. Run the option, run the RPO that has a keeper option. This is nothing new, by the way. With DJ Lagway, they're always going to run RPOs. They're always going to run the zone read. Teams to this point have usually been like, hey, we'll let him hand it off and we'll try to make that stop there, as opposed to saying, yeah, let DJ Lagway run. We're just going to crash down on the running back. That's a discipline thing here, right? Right now, that's a discipline thing because teams are not wanting DJ Lagway to take off running. No team really wants quarterbacks to take the ball running because usually everyone else is flowing to the other side, and so quarterbacks get to pick up consistent yardage. We've seen Graham Mertz find decent success when he's kept the ball there. So it's going to be a discipline thing. If I were Florida, I'm looking at whatever side, whoever they think is the least disciplined as far as gap discipline, and we're going to run the option to that side and see, make him basically prove that he could stop you there. Georgia's pass rush this year, interesting. It hasn't been, here's the thing, I don't want to say it's bad. It has been pretty inconsistent this year. And that's just, I feel like that's a fact, right? We've seen them go games with 10 pressures, 14 pressures on multiple pass attempts. And then we've also seen them, I think against Texas, they had like 30. Like they just lit up Texas. They've had a pretty inconsistent pass rush. Jalen Walker is a freak whenever he's allowed to just pin his ears back and get after the quarterback. He does a damn good job at that. He is just one of those guys where you go, okay, well, they weaponized him. And against Texas, he wrecked them. He just wrecked against Texas. He's going to move around the formation. Got to keep an eye on him, number 11 on Georgia's defense. Have to keep an eye on him and not let him kind of abuse you there. Michael Williams, very inconsistent, but he's another one that's a pop player whenever he's been available. But to this point, not sure what he's going to be looking like this week. He's been dealing with injuries this year. It's pretty good defense when they're on, inconsistent pass rush when they're not. And I will say this as well for just Georgia's pass defense in general, which I don't think is necessarily indicating a fall from, if you want to call it grace for those scumbags, we could say that. But Georgia allowed, just a little fun fact, Georgia's allowed 2 300-yard passers this year. They allowed 0 last season, which is nuts to look at. But according to Sports Reference, 0 300-yard passers allowed last year, 2 already to this point in the season. It feels like a defense that's more human than we've seen under Kirby in a long time, and we know that this team's going to show up. So when I talk about, hey, their pass rush is inconsistent, I'm expecting this week to be a week where their pass rush is on, because you're coming off a bye, coming off a hell of a game against Texas, and you're playing your rival. This feels like a week where everybody is going to be on in this one. And so I'm expecting that from Georgia's pass rush. But again, this is a game where you can find success against this Georgia defense. They have had struggles in some areas. I don't expect this to be a week where it's like, oh yeah, there's a ton of missed tackles. That's one thing that Georgia's still pretty damn good at. They are pretty consistently good there. But now it's time to talk about the Florida Gators defense against this Georgia Bulldogs offense next on Locked On Gators. Get ready to tackle the NFL action with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Right now, new customers can bet $5 and get $150 in bonus bets if you win. The FanDuel Sportsbook app gives you everything you need to place live bets on the NFL, NBA, MLB during the season there as well. So when you get a hunch in the middle of the game, Luka's got 10 points in the second quarter. His line's at 23.5. How often does Luka not get 23.5 points, right? Things like that. Derrick Henry's got 10 yards. His line's now 47.5. How often does he not get that? Just visit FanDuel.com to join today. You'll get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. That's FanDuel.com. So never waste a hunch and make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. Thanks again for making Locked On Gators your first listen of the day every day. We are available daily and free wherever you listen to the podcast and on YouTube. I am Brandon Olsen, the host of Locked On Gators. I am flying solo. We don't have a crossover episode, as I explained earlier. This is now the second time in the past 3 years where I have reached out to the Georgia hosts and nowhere to be found when it comes time to talk about a rivalry game. You'd think people would show up for that one, but I guess not. The Florida Gators defense has been playing lights out from basically since that first bye ended. And now they are going to be without Jason Marshall Jr., who was putting out just... I've been very critical of Jason Marshall Jr. since I took over for this show in April 1st, 2021 was my first episode hosting this show. And I've been very critical of Jason Marshall Jr. since then. He's been putting out really good tape this year. And I'm very disappointed that he's not going to be available. He's going to be out for the remainder of this season with a torn labrum, I believe they said. Considering Georgia last year was probably his most impressive game that we saw from him throughout the entire season last year. So really disappointed that he's not going to be there. I know that I've seen people on social media go, oh, he puts out a bunch of great film and all of a sudden disappears and the schedule gets tougher. He was better during the tougher stretch of the schedule last year. I don't think he's ducking that smoke. He's not the host of Locked On Bulldogs. I think that he's just injured. The Georgia Bulldogs offense, very heavy in two areas, okay? Very heavy play action passing team, very heavy screen team. And yes, there is some overlap in there when you're going to play action and then throw a screen, but 34.6% of their dropbacks are play action, which is a high number. Carson Beck is completing 69.2% of his passes off of play action, 7 touchdowns, just 1 interception. By the way, he's completing 69.2% of his passes with 7 drops. If you adjust it, it's 77.8%. So he's been deadly accurate off of play action. Basically, a quarter of his passes are behind the line of scrimmage, 22.1% screens, and another 4.2% of just behind the line passes. Behind the line, he is 63 for 66. And I mean, it's behind the line passing, right? It's creating yards after catch opportunities, whether you're throwing to Trevor Etienne, former Florida Gator, whether you're throwing to any of the receivers out there as well. Screens have been a big part of the game. He did throw an interception on a screen, which is just, it's a funny thing regardless. He's been playing really good football though this year. Like I'll laugh at him throwing a pick on the screen, but he's been playing just really good football this year. There's no other way to put it. I mean, his deep ball pass has been beautiful. He's one of those quarterbacks where you look at it and you go, yeah, like he's got some flaws. He may make some mistakes here, may sometimes hold on to the ball too long, may do this, may do that. But he's been very good in some areas. Again, play action passing, deep ball, which again, those go hand in hand frequently, right? A lot of times when a team uses play action, they'll have someone running deep somewhere in case there's a busted coverage, someone bites on the play fake, anything can happen, right? So when he's been throwing deep and when he's been operating out of play action, he's been very good. One area he's been pretty horrendous this year is when he's under pressure. I don't know what the Florida Gators plan is going to be of, hey, do we blitz the lights out of them? Do we play with 4 rushing and drop 7 in coverage and run creepers and try to generate pressure in other ways? I do think that it is of the utmost importance that, yes, you generate pressure for the Florida Gators, which obviously is not reinventing the wheel here to say you need to generate pressure on a quarterback. Who'd have thought? But Carson Beck has really struggled when he's been under pressure. Right now, he's got 3 touchdowns, 1 pick, which is, fine. He's completing 41% of his passes. 41% of his passes. He tends to throw deep there usually, which makes a lot of sense. You hold the ball to look for a deep pass. There's more likely that defensive players will generate pressure on you while you are looking for the deep pass. But of the utmost importance to generate pressure on Carson Beck in this game and try to make him make a mistake. And he's made his fair share of mistakes when not pressured, of course, but try to generate pressure, force those mistakes, force those miscues, try to figure out something to just stop this offense as frequently as you can, which again, not reinventing the wheel. Georgia, very zone run heavy offense, which here in this case means that you've got to have your defensive linemen clog the lanes. You've got Cam Jackson, who's played some really good football in some games. He's played not awesome football in some other games, but this year we've seen it quite a bit where he's played some really good football. A lot of the guys on the defensive front are playing really good football. I'm very interested to see what you get from a guy like a Jack Pyburn, who's been playing lights out against the run specifically. What you get from a guy like Cam Jackson, who's been playing very well on the interior. Des Watson's been playing better as a nose tackle this year than we've seen him play throughout his career. Okay. I'm curious to see what you get from a Tyreek Sapp, who's been playing very well against her. A lot of these Florida Gators front players have been playing very well against their run. And I do think that you have to look at a Des Watson, a Cam Jackson, a Mekhi Boyroe when he's out there, if he's out there. And you go, all right, you need to destroy that lane. Because again, when you're talking about the wide zone run, you're talking about linemen are trying to block horizontally to create vertical rushing lanes. You got to close those. And the best way to close those is to have defensive linemen on the interior take away the cutback lanes and have linebackers fly downhill to the side that the run's going to. And then you've got to have someone on the backside containing in case there's a cutback. But you've got to play disciplined football defensively, and you've got to play aggressive physical football defensively. Florida Gators can't have any miscues there. Can't have any screw-ups. You have to be aggressive. You have to be physical. You have to be disciplined, especially up front. I look at someone like Cam Jackson, and I go, man, you've got to dominate the A-gap when you're in there. You've got to take away those cutbacks. Jaden Robinson, Pop Howard, physical as hell. Honestly, I'll say this. I don't think that I'm ready to say Jaden Robinson's a better linebacker than Shamar James. I will say I think Jaden Robinson's a better run defending linebacker than Shamar James. And so Pup and Jaden Robinson need to play a lot on early downs, and they need to be out there stopping these runs early, forcing Georgia into obvious passing situations. We are going to talk about the predictions for this game for the Florida Gators against the Georgia Bulldogs next on Locked On Gators. Our friends at 5 Hour Energy know that being a passionate football fan isn't just a hobby, it's a way of life. It takes a lot of energy to get through all-day tailgates, touchdown celebrations, or an agonizing second overtime, which is why they've created Stand the Fan 5 Hour Energy Shot with a special flavor called Fan Fuel, the energy shot made just for super fans like us, the fans who are first in the parking lot, who are last to leave, doing a live show from the stands, listening to a live show from the stands. We see you. All right. 5 Hour Energy knows that no matter what team you root for, being a fan requires heart, soul, and a whole lot of energy. So whether you're prepping for the big tailgate, ironing your jersey, your game day to-do list is always a mile long, right? That's why the limited edition Stand the Fan 5 Hour Energy Shot is here to help keep you fueled throughout the season. What's your fan fuel this week? Whatever it is, do it with a 5 Hour Energy, available on 5hourenergy.com, shipped nationwide. To wrap up today's episode of Locked On Gators, which is, again, featuring just me, Brandon Olsen, the host of Locked On Gators. No crossover this week. Smoke duckers, that's all I'm saying. We are talking about the predictions for this game. I'll be honest with you all. I tried to talk myself into it. I really tried to talk myself into it. But I couldn't do it. I am picking the Georgia Bulldogs to win. Again, I do think that this is a more human Georgia Bulldogs team than we've seen in recent years. I do think that the Florida Gators have been playing really good football in recent weeks prior to the bye week. I do think that Florida has a small chance to win this game. Very small. I think if you play this game 10 times, Florida maybe wins 1, maybe 2. Okay. I think Georgia's still a considerably better team with considerably better coaching throughout. That's not even a Billy Napier knock. That's just they have a pretty damn good coaching staff. So I tried to talk myself into Florida winning this game, but I couldn't do it. And I've told you all always, everything I do on this show is me giving my honest opinion. Whether I'm right or wrong, I want you all to know I don't care about being right or wrong. I've been right before. I've been wrong before. I'll be right again. I'll be wrong again. I hope I'll be right again. But I couldn't talk myself into that because it's all about being honest here. So I am picking Georgia to win. However, the line at the time of recording this late Wednesday night is Georgia minus 16.5. I have put my money where my mouth is. Okay. I am picking Florida to cover 16.5 points. And I'm picking over 52.5 combined for the teams total. I do think that this is going to be closer than most games we've seen, provided this is what really hung me up here. Florida needs to play clean, consistent football. And I don't know if we can say we've seen them do that. They did it against Kentucky. It was clean and it was consistent. Tennessee, the players played consistent. The players played clean. Coaches didn't. UCF, I continue to say, I think Florida played average Power 4 football, which isn't a bad thing. I think UCF played horrible. So we've seen Florida show up and show out, right? If you can get a team that shows up with the energy that they showed up with the past 2 games, Tennessee, Kentucky, if you can see the team show up with that kind of energy, that kind of fire, and then you see coaching staff on point with things, no stupid miscues, nothing like that, I think Florida has a chance. And again, I will stick with chance. But as far as covering 16.5 points, any rivalry game, I wouldn't do that. I don't. Every year, Florida's lost games by 20-something to Georgia when the line is 22. I'm not touching a 3-score, or I'm not betting a 3-score spread. I'm taking Florida to cover that one. As far as the over 52.5, I think first half, Florida has some pretty good big play potential. Again, with the safeties that are missing the first half due to a targeting call for Georgia, I look at Florida having a pretty decent shot at a couple big plays, making something happen. I look at DJ Lagway's run game. And here's another thing I'll say, because I know that a lot of people talk about this is DJ Lagway's first elite opponent, right? You could talk about Tennessee being ranked in the top 8. I don't think any Florida Gators fan truly thinks that Tennessee team is elite, right? Really good defense, not an elite opponent. Georgia is elite. I don't think many people will question that. Many people will argue or debate that, right? So Georgia is elite. This is DJ Lagway's first start against an elite opponent. Not going to be easy. We'll see how Billy Napier handles it. I don't think that, I don't think Billy Napier's coached great against Georgia throughout his career. I think he's sometimes tried to get too big for his britches with some things, like the snap under Graham Mertz's legs with Trevor Etienne. I think having an option to throw that ball if he wanted to, things like that, can't happen. DJ Lagway's first game against an elite team, though, you need to see how he's going to perform. I will say, based on everything we've seen, because Tennessee wasn't an elite team, but Tennessee was big game environment, right? It was hostile, on the road, loud environment. I mean, Hayden Hansen came on the show and he's like, yeah, that Tennessee game was maybe the loudest environment I've ever played in. I think week in, week out, Swamp's incredible, but that environment, I think, was a lot, right? You see DJ Lagway go into this game, big game environment, big game feel, and be able to ball out consistently. Because Tennessee, he played great. Tennessee, he didn't start. That's the important thing here. Now you need to see DJ Lagway go in and play well. I think he will. Again, he went into that Tennessee game, balled out in a big moment too, with the touchdown in the third and I think 19 to send the game to overtime. He's shown he's not afraid of the big moment. Needed to play like it in this game. Most important game of the season, I think, for the Florida Gators. And got to tighten up in this one. Thanks for making Locked On Gators your first listen of the day every day. We are available daily and free wherever you listen to the podcast. We'll be back tomorrow, talk more Florida Gators football. It will be just me again. Crazy how that works, right? For Locked On Gators, I'm Brandon Olsen. Don't forget to follow me on Twitter at WNS_Brandon. Find all my written work, the New York Giants on SI, and I will see you all next time.